Hello everybody. Today I'll talk about the body fluid, which is an important composition or part of your body. Body fluid has different compartments. So your body fluid is located in different compartments inside your body. So we'll talk about the compartments of the body fluid. Two major compartments are extracellular and intercellular compartments. So we'll talk about the extracellular body fluid compartment and intercellular body fluid compartment. Then we'll talk about the composition of the body fluid. Body fluid composed of water, which is the main component of the body fluid, and many solutes are dissolved in water. So we'll talk about those solutes are dissolved in water. Okay. Then we'll talk about the concentration of different solutes in extracellular and intercellular fluid. Okay. Then we'll talk about the sub compartments of the extracellular fluid. So this extracellular fluid compartment has subcompartments or subdivisions. So we'll talk about those. Then we'll talk about the electrolytes, non-electrolytes. So solutes could be two types: electrolytes and non-electrolytes. Okay. And then we'll talk about the acids, bases, buffer, how the body fluid is regulated, the amount of body fluid is controlled. You know that the urinary system regulates the body fluid. So urinary system is the main system that regulates the body fluid. So we'll talk about those few things. First, the amount of body fluid is more in infants than the adults. If you measure the fluid part in the body of an infant compared to the solid part, the fluid part is more. That means about 73% or more of the total body volume of an infant is fluid or water. Okay, and rest part, that means 27% is solid. So 73% is fluid or water, and only 27%, remaining 27% is solid part. That means muscles, proteins, carbohydrates, fats, those components. However, in adult male, the volume of body fluid is about 60%. That means 40% is solid and 60% is water or fluid. Make sense? So the amount of fluid or water in the infant body is much more than the adult. And if you see adult female, the amount of body fluid is less than the adult male. In adult male, the body fluid or water volume is 60% and 40% is solid. And in female, 50% volume is water or body fluid and 50% is solid. Now, the question is, why in adult male has more body fluid than the adult female? Remember, in the male body, the amount of muscle is more, right? In general, the amount of muscle is more, and muscle has a lot of water in it. Inside the muscle, you have a lot of water. Okay. In female, you have more fat but less muscle. Okay, and fat has less amount of water inside it. Okay, so that's why in the adult male body, the amount of water is more than in the female body. However, as we get older, the amount of body fluid or water declines. Okay, and in an older person, the average body fluid is around 45%. That means the body fluid declines a lot in old age. Okay, that's why the body shrinks. You know that the older people, the size of the body gets smaller, shrinks because of the loss of body fluid. Okay, so about 55% is solid and 45% is water or fluid in older people. Okay, so you need to know the amount of body fluid or water at different stages of life. Okay, now we'll talk about the compartments. As I told you, the two compartments are intracellular and extracellular. The name of these compartments tell you what are those compartments. Intra means inside, right? Intracellular, that means inside the cell, and extracellular, that means outside of the cell. Human body consists of, can you guess how many cells are present in the human body? Human body consists of 30 to 40 trillion of cells, not million, not billion, trillion. And in between the cells, that means outside of the cells, which is called the extracellular. Okay, so you have cells about 30 to 40 trillion, and in between the cells you have extracellular spaces. And you all know that inside the cell you have the cytoplasm, which is a fluid. So if you add all these cells together, the fluid inside those cells together form the intracellular compartment. Okay, that means the fluid inside all the cells, 30 to 40 trillion cells of your body together form the intracellular compartment. Okay, and the fluid present outside of the cell in the extracellular spaces, that fluid is the extracellular fluid. Okay, now uh, why you have the cell membrane? This is very important. You know that cell membrane is a very important structure. And why you have cell membrane? You have cell membrane to keep the intracellular fluid separated from the extracellular fluid. That tells you that the composition of intracellular fluid is different than the composition of the extracellular fluid. Makes sense? Otherwise you didn't need the cell membrane if the fluid composition was same. Since you know the extracellular fluid composition should be different than the intercellular fluid composition. That's why you have the cell membrane to keep them separated. Okay, so we'll talk about the composition of the intercellular fluid and extracellular fluid. Okay, but they are not same, and that's why you need the cell membrane, okay, to keep them separated. Okay, now the volume of intercellular fluid is more than the volume of the extracellular fluid. The total volume of water or body fluid in adult person is 40 liter. This is the total, okay, volume. Now 2/3 of this total volume, that means 25 liter, is intercellular, and 1/3, that means 15 liter, is extracellular fluid. So in the extracellular spaces you have total 15 liter, and inside the cells total you have 25 liters of fluid or water. Okay, now I told you that extracellular fluid compartment has sub compartments. Okay, so the main sub compartment is the fluid in between the cells, and that is called the interstitial fluid. So this fluid between the cells, again let me draw, these are the cells, and the fluid in between the cells, this is extracellular fluid, but specifically this fluid is called interstitial fluid. Okay, so it is the main part of the extracellular fluid. So interstitial fluid is the main part of the extracellular fluid compartment. Total extracellular is 15 liter, you know that. That means outside of the cells of the body you have 15 liter of water, and the main part of that extracellular is interstitial fluid, which is about 12 liters. Okay, so you see, out of 15, 20 liter of extracellular fluid is located in the interstitial space in between the cells. Okay, that is the interstitial fluid. However, in some areas of your body where you don't have the cells, only fluid, those are also extracellular fluid. For example, in the joints, in your knee joint, elbow joint, or other synovial joints, you have fluid. So that is also a part of extracellular fluid compartment. So synovial fluid in the joints, right? Intraocular fluid, you know that inside the eyeball you have aqueous humor and vitreous humor, you already know that. So that fluid is also a part of extracellular fluid compartment. Okay, so it's humors of the eye, aqueous humor, vitreous humor. Serous fluid, you remember in the pericardial cavity you have pericardial fluid. In the pleural cavity around the lung you have fluid, right? Pleural fluid. In the abdomen you have peritoneal cavity where you have the peritoneal fluid. So all those together is called the serous fluid. Pericardial, right, around the heart, you already know that. Pleural around the lung, and peritoneal around the abdominal organs, right? Peritoneal. So you see, these fluid are called the serous fluid. Okay, So in between the visceral and parietal layers. And then gastrointestinal secretion, you know that inside the stomach secretion occurs, right, from the gastric gland. That fluid is located in the stomach, inside the mouth. Small amount of salivary secretion occurs, so that is also uh, the fluid inside your GI tract. Okay, so fluid inside the stomach, inside the intestine, right, uh, and also inside the mouth, all belong to the gastrointestinal fluid. So all these are located outside of the cells of the body. So those are the extracellular fluid. Okay, intercellular fluid compartment doesn't have any sub compartments because that is the fluid inside the cells of the body. Make sense? Now the composition of the body fluid. You know, I mentioned at the very beginning today that the body fluid uh, composed of water, which is the main part of the body fluid, and also solutes, right? You remember that? And I told you that solutes are two types, electrolytes and non-electrolytes. Okay, electrolytes carry electrical signal. Electrical signal. And if you see the electrolytes, when the electrolytes dissolved in water, they carry the electrical charges. For example, sodium carries positive charge. Potassium is an electrolyte because in water it carries electrical charge. Chloride is also an electrolyte because it carries electrical charge. Now you see that electrical charge could be positive or negative. For example, sodium, potassium, calcium, they carry positive charge, and chloride, for example, carries negative, right? So electrolytes are the solutes that carry the electrical charges when they are dissolved in the fluid or water. Okay, so all these are electrolytes. Bicarbonate carries negative, hydrogen carries positive, right? So all these are electrolytes, and electrolytes carry electrical charge when dissolved in water or body fluid, and most of the electrolytes are inorganic salts or acids and bases. Small amount of proteins also are electrolytes. So let me just make it more clear. Inorganic salts, sodium chloride is the most common, right, salt in the body, and it is an inorganic salt. And you know, when sodium chloride, that salt, is dissolved in water, we get sodium plus and chloride minus. So you see, when the sodium chloride is dissolved in water, these two chemicals get separated, and one carries positive, another carries the negative. So these are electrolytes. Acids. One common type of acid is hydrochloric acid, probably you know, HCl, and when it dissolves in water, it gives hydrogen and chloride. This is positive, this is negative, right? So these all belong to electrolytes. Okay. Bases. The most common base is the sodium hydroxide, most common. And when it dissolves in water, it gives sodium positive and hydroxyl negative. Okay. So see, base, acid, salt. I gave you good examples: salt, acid, and base. All these inorganic compounds belong to the electrolytes because they give the ions that carry the electrical signal, and these are called the ions. So ions carry electrical signal. Okay. Now, non-electrolytes are mostly the organic compounds in your body: proteins, carbohydrates, fats. Most simplest form of carbohydrate is glucose, which does not carry electrical charge. So it is non-electrolyte. Lipid, different types of lipids, phospholipids, right? Triglycerides, um, they don't carry electrical charge. Creatinine, urea, these are the non-electrolytes. They don't carry positive or negative charges. Okay. Now, one thing is very important that you need to know: why you need the electrolytes in the body. Electrolytes, as you know, carry the electrical charge. The electrolytes carry the electrical signal. Okay, and electrical signal is essential for life. Why? Because electrical signal performs the most important body functions. Without electrical signal, those functions will not be occurring. For example, for muscle contraction, you need electrical signal transmission. Okay, muscle contraction. For nerve signal transmission, neural function. Nerve signal transmission, all types of functions of your brain or the nervous system requires electrical signal transmission. So without the electrolytes, electrical signal transmission will not occur. So for our survival, for our life, we need the electrical signal transmission. That means electrolytes. Okay. Uh, Let me give you a little more detail how the electrical signal works. You already know in some extent. This is, for example, a muscle fiber, and you remember the neuromuscular junction from ENP1. This is the axon terminal, right? Presynaptic terminal. You have the vesicles inside and acetylcholine here, neurotransmitter. Okay, and this is the muscle fiber. Okay, and you probably remember that electrical signal should travel this way, and when the electrical signal passes through the presynaptic terminal, the rupture of the vesicles occur here, and to rupture the vesicles you need the calcium ion to get in to rupture these vesicles, to release the neurotransmitters, right? So you see that calcium is essential for the release of the neurotransmitters. Okay, without the release of neurotransmitter, electrical signal will not go to the muscle. Okay, and then these neurotransmitter molecules will bind with the receptors, right, on the postsynaptic membrane and will open the sodium channels. Okay, so what will happen, the sodium ions will get into the muscle, and that will cause the depolarization, move inside the muscle fiber the voltage towards positive, because sodium is positive, right? So if sodium gets inside the muscle fiber, the voltage will move towards positive, and that is called depolarization. Okay, and then after that, what will happen, the sodium channels will get closed, and potassium ions, remember ions, all these are ions, calcium, sodium, potassium, they carry positive or negative charges. So potassium will get out. So potassium is positive, and if potassium gets out, then inside the muscle fiber it will get less positive, right, because potassium is getting out, and that is called repolarization. And depolarization and repolarization together is called the action potential. Probably you have heard this name, action potential. Without action potential, your muscle contraction will not occur, nerve signal transmission will not occur. Okay, so action potential, which has two parts, depolarization, entrance of sodium ion, and repolarization, exit of potassium ion, right? And that action potential is essential for those important functions, muscle contraction, nerve signal transmission. Um, so now you understand why you need the electrolytes, right? To rupture the vesicles, you need calcium ions. To cause depolarization, you need the entrance of sodium ions. To cause the repolarization, you need the efflux or exit of the potassium ion. Okay. Okay. Now we'll see the composition of intracellular and interstitial fluid. You remember, I already mentioned that the fluid inside the cells is the intracellular fluid, this one intracellular. That is shown by yellow color here, remember. And the largest compartment of extracellular fluid compartment is the interstitial fluid, that has about 12 liter of fluid or water, right, in between the cells. So this is the interstitial, this is intracellular, this is outside of the cell interstitial fluid, shown by blue color here. So we'll just compare these two. Okay, so if you take fluid from inside the cell and from outside of the cell, inside the cell is shown by yellow, intercellular, outside of the cell is shown by interstitial, which is blue. First, let's see the concentration of sodium ion. Inside the cell, the sodium amount is much smaller than interstitial, that means outside. So you see, uh, outside of the cell, that means in the interstitial fluid, the concentration of sodium is very high, 140 milli equivalent per liter here. However, the concentration of sodium inside the cell, intercellular, is about 10 milli equivalent, so much less, right? However, potassium is just opposite. The concentration of potassium inside the cell is very high compared to the interstitial or outside of the cell. Okay, so sodium and potassium concentration is just opposite. inside and outside of the cell, which is very important, which is essential. Because you see, a few minutes ago in last slide I showed you this is a muscle fiber, and when the sodium channels get opened, sodium influx occurs, right? Sodium gets in. I told you that, but I didn't tell you why sodium gets in, why it doesn't get out. Because now you know that sodium concentration is very high outside, right? So here the concentration of sodium is very high, and inside the cell is very low. So when the channels or doors will open, from outside the sodium will get in, right? It is a natural process. From high concentration the chemicals move to the low concentration area, right? So since here outside of the cell in the interstitial fluid the concentration of sodium is very high, it will quickly get in, right, and will cause the depolarization in the cell or muscle fiber. Now sodium gets closed, potassium ions get opened. Now I told you that potassium will get out. Why? Because the concentration of potassium, you see, is very high inside the cell and very low outside of the cell. So potassium will definitely quickly get out, and that will cause the repolarization, and this is the action potential, right? So you see that the cell membrane is keeping them separated, and that's why you need the cell membrane to keep the solutes or electrolytes separated, and the concentration um, is different, and that is maintained. Now another one you need to know is the amount of calcium. You see here, calcium is present outside of the cell in the interstitial fluid, but no calcium inside the cell. So no yellow is here. Make sense? Only you see the blue interstitial. So calcium is present outside of the cell in the interstitial fluid. Another one you need to know is the chloride. Chloride is very high in the interstitial fluid but very low inside the cell. The last one you need to know is the protein. You see here the yellow is here, blue is very little, small amount, right? So that means the intracellular fluid inside the cell, the protein amount is much higher than outside of the cell, which makes sense because you know that inside the cell the ribosomes, protein synthesis occurs inside the cell, right? So where the factory is, you will find more protein there. So inside the cell you know that ribosomes synthesize the protein. So inside the cell the protein amount is higher than the outside. Okay, so those are the main electrolytes and their concentrations in interstitial and intracellular fluid. Okay, now the most abundant chemical in the body is the water, right? Your body is mainly composed of water, and water is an inorganic chemical. Okay, and the amount of water you take every day is same amount of water that you excrete. So the amount of water gets into the body and the amount of water gets out from the body is same, and that is about 2.5 liter. That means 2500 milliliter per day. How we intake water into the body? You know, by drinking, by eating food, and small amount of water is produced by metabolism inside the body. Okay, you probably know that metabolism needs nutrients, that means food. That's why we take the food every day. Nutrients, and what else we take every day? We take nutrients and we take oxygen. And metabolism occurs inside the body, and when the metabolism occurs, we get ATP, energy. That's why you need metabolism to produce ATP or energy. Then also we get other things. We get a small amount of water. We get carbon dioxide and toxic chemicals, metabolic wastes. And another very important thing we get by metabolism is heat. More metabolism, more heat is produced. You know that. When you do exercise, more metabolism occurs, right? More heat is produced in the body. More carbon dioxide is produced in the body. So, you see, the output or the components we get by metabolism are ATP for energy, water, small amount, so that is the metabolic water. Okay, and these are good things. Heat, your body needs heat, otherwise hypothermia, body will get cold, all functions will be stopped. So you need ATP or energy, you need water, and you need heat. These are good things. Bad things that are produced by metabolism are carbon dioxide and metabolic wastes like urea, uric acid, ammonia, right? Those are the toxic chemicals. Output of water, how we lose water from the body, how water gets out from the body. The main way is the urination, through urine. However, water also gets out from the body through the skin, that means sweating, and also called evaporation. Those are two things. And through the lung, when you breathe, expand the air molecule, water molecules get out. You can check it during the winter morning. If you put a mirror in front of your mouth and expand the air, you will see tiny water molecules on the glass, right? So that happens. So through the skin by sweating and evaporation, through the lung by expiring the air, expiration or exhalation of air. When we talk, small amount of water also gets out. That's why you feel thirsty after you give a long talk, right? Also through feces, some water gets out from the body. So those are the ways we take the water inside the body, and the ways water gets out from the body. Now the ways water get out from the body can be divided into two processes. Okay, how the water gets out. One is called sensible water loss. Another type is called insensible water loss, right? So two types of water loss from the body, or two ways water gets out from the body. Sensible ways, that urination, that you can see, you can feel, right? Sweating through the skin, makes sense? You can see that water is getting out, you can feel that, right? So those are sensible. Insensible, breathing, right? You don't see that, but you are losing water. Every time you expire air, some water molecules get out from the lung. Uh, Through the skin by evaporation that you don't see all the time. Evaporation. Through the skin, small amount of water is getting out even when you are sleeping. That is not sweating, that is evaporation, right? Um, so breathing, talking, right? So these are insensible. Urination, sweating, through feces, these are sensible. Okay. Now you see through the skin you lose the water, both sensible, which is sweating, and insensible, which is evaporation. Okay, both ways. Regulation of water output, you must remember, uh, kidney has the nephrons, right? Millions of nephrons inside the kidneys. And you also remember, I already explained this. This is the distal convoluted tubule, and this is the collecting duct, and aldosterone, uh, a hormone that comes from the adrenal cortex that works on mainly on this part, distal convoluted tubule, and reabsorbs water and sodium. So if more aldosterone is released, more sodium and water will get back into the body. Reabsorption will occur, right? So the body fluid or water will increase in the body. Antidiuretic hormone from the pituitary, posterior pituitary, comes and mainly works on the collecting duct, and that causes the reabsorption of water. So more ADH means body fluid will be more, increased body fluid, because water is going back into the body. Make sense? And less ADH means more urine production, less body fluid. Okay, same way this one. So you see that these two hormones, aldosterone and antidiuretic hormone or ADH, play a very important role to regulate the body fluid. Okay, and aldosterone is released from the adrenal cortex. Adrenal gland is located on the kidney, you know that. So on the upper pole of the kidney. So if someone has, you know, abnormal function of the adrenal gland, that will also change the body fluid, amount of body fluid. Okay, hypofunction of adrenal cortex, if you know, um, hypo adrenocortical cortical function occurs. Hypo means less. Hypofunction of adrenal cortex, adrenal cortex, then what will happen? Less aldosterone will be released, right? So less water and sodium will get back into the body. So body fluid will be decreased. Blood pressure will go down, right? So that is a clinical condition where the body fluid amount will be less, blood pressure will be less. Okay, that is called Addison's disease. Another abnormal or clinical condition can occur due to disease in the posterior pituitary. If disease occurs in the posterior pituitary, less secretion of ADH occurs, then less water will get back into the body. So the blood volume or water volume or body fluid volume will be less, right? That will also cause hypotension or low blood pressure and other problems. So those are two main hormones that regulate the amount of body fluid. Okay, here You can see this is a nice chart. If you lose the water from the body, then what will happen? The concentration of body fluid will go up. That means the osmolarity will increase. Okay, so if you lose water, only the water, remember, not the solutes, then the concentration of body fluid will go up, right? Increase osmolarity, increase sodium concentration in the plasma of your body. So just think that what you have to do in this case, you have to increase the water, add water to bring it back to normal, because water is less in the body fluid. If you think simple, you will understand clearly. Okay, so in this condition, the concentration is high because less water in the body fluid. So that will do what? It will stimulate the hypothalamus. Here, this is the hypothalamus sitting above the pituitary gland, right, and regulates the pituitary secretion. So hypothalamus has osmoreceptors that can detect the concentration or osmolarity of the blood. Okay, so when the osmolarity will increase, that means the concentration is high, then hypothalamus will be stimulated because it has the osmoreceptors that can detect that, and will send signal to the posterior pituitary. Okay, and posterior pituitary will release the antidiuretic hormone ADH, you already know that, and that will work on the collecting ducts of the kidney that I just explained, also explained in the urinary system. Water will be reabsorbed more, water reabsorption will be more, and that will increase the blood volume, more water in the blood, and that will lower the concentration, increase the plasma volume, and decrease the urine production. Okay, so CADH is released from the posterior pituitary. This is the posterior pituitary, by the way. So uh, this is how the antidiuretic hormone is released and regulates the volume of water or concentration of fluid in the body. Disorders of water balance. Very commonly heard, term or terminology is dehydration. You know that dehydration occurs. Um, Common causes are vomiting or vomiting, right? Diarrhea, so these are very common, right? Vomiting, diarrhea, uh, burns. When burns occur, body fluid comes out under the skin, edema occurs, right? So that are the common, causes of dehydration. Also, not drinking water, right? Um, so you know that water is located both inside the cells and outside of the cells. However, when you lose water by dehydration occurs in the body, uh, first water should get out from the extracellular fluid, because this is already outside of the cell, right? So that fluid will get out from the body, and then from inside the, to maintain the balance, from inside the cell the water will get out, okay, later. So first we lose the water from the extracellular fluid, then from inside the cell the fluid gets out to fill that gap. Uh, so the common causes, as I mentioned, that severe burns, vomiting, diarrhea, also hemorrhage, bleeding, right? If sudden bleeding occurs, that will decrease the water volume in the body. Profuse sweating, excessive sweating will cause dehydration, water deprivation if you don't drink water, or excessive use of diuretics, abusive use of diuretics. Diuretics already I mentioned before, are the chemicals that could be food or medicine that causes excess production of urine. So if you take the diuretics more, then more urine will be produced and dehydration will occur. Okay. Uh, Atypical accumulation of fluid in the uh, body outside of the cell, that is called edema. So if excess fluid accumulates in this area outside of the cell, interstitial fluid, right, that is called edema. So this is like normal situation. These are the cells and interstitial fluid outside of the cell, right? Now, what happens if you get inflammation, edema occurs, you know that. Uh, that means fluid comes out from the blood and accumulates in the interstitial spaces. More fluid accumulates. Normal amount of fluid in the interstitial fluid is normal, but if more water gets out from the blood, that will cause edema. So that's why we say atypical, not normal accumulation of fluid in the interstitial space. Okay, and that will cause swelling and other symptoms. Okay, now what are the few instances that can change the interstitial and intracellular fluid? So let me just give you few examples. This is the fluid compartment, and you know that about 25 liter is the intracellular fluid compartment, right? And extracellular fluid compartment contains about 15 liter of water. Okay, now you tell me if I draw this way to show you the volume, and this way osmolarity, concentration. Change of concentration or osmolarity, and this way change of volume. So let's see. So first tell me if you get diarrhea, what will happen? In diarrhea we lose the water and electrolytes, right? So both water and solutes, electrolytes, get out, right? So if water gets out, the volume will shrink, the volume will get smaller, right? So first the water gets out from the extracellular fluid, you remember I mentioned that. So it will shrink this way, the volume, it will move this way, the volume will be less. Make sense? And we are also losing electrolytes, solutes, so the concentration will not change, will remain same. Remember, the volume will go down because we are losing water. However, the concentration will not change much because we are not only losing water, we are also losing the solutes. It's like, I mentioned before, if you have glucose solution here, if you take the water only out, concentration will go up, also volume will go down. If you only take water out from this solution of glucose, what will happen? The concentration will go up, the volume will go down. Makes sense, right? If I take only the glucose solutes out, then what will happen? The concentration will go down, opposite, right? So just think simple, and that will explain this. Okay, so now in diarrhea we are losing both water and solutes, both, so the volume will go down but the concentration will remain same. So this way no change, but this way you will see the volume will move this way down in the extracellular fluid. Okay, now let's think about another condition. If you get a disease in your posterior pituitary, so less ADH is being released, that will cause diabetes insipidus, right? That means too much urine will be produced. Okay, in that case you will lose a lot of water from the body, so the volume will also go down. Okay, in that case, and since you are losing more water but not the solutes, so in this case the volume of water will be less in your body fluid, but the amount of solutes, if you just take water out, then concentration will go up because solutes are staying in the body, right? Only water is getting out with the urine. More water is getting out with the urine. So if you just only remove the water from the body, that will increase the concentration or osmolarity. In that case, we'll move this way. Okay, body fluid will be less, and also but the concentration will be high. Okay, uh, so just to know that how the concentration and body fluid can be changed in the body. Okay, acid and bases. Uh, you know that normal pH of your blood is 7.35 to 7.45, right? That is the range, normal range. And that means blood is slightly alkaline. Why? Because neutral pH is 7.0. So 7.0 is neutral. That means it is not neither acidic nor alkaline. Okay. If the pH goes above 7, that is alkaline. Below 7 is acidic. So now you know that since blood is slightly above 7, that means blood is slightly alkaline. And if the pH of your blood goes below 7.35, which is the lower boundary, that means your body is acidic. For example, if the pH of blood goes to 7.20, your body is becoming acidic. That is called acidosis. Okay. If the pH goes above 7.45, alkalosis. Okay. So you see that pH is maintained within a narrow range in your blood. Similarly, the concentration of all other electrolytes must be maintained or regulated within a narrow range. For example, the concentration of calcium ion should be between 9 to 11 milligram per 100 milliliter of blood. Okay, your sodium, potassium, chloride, all those electrolytes must be within the narrow range. The problem occurs if the concentration of those electrolytes changes. For example, if the calcium concentration goes below 9, that means below normal range, that will cause hypocalcemia. Make sense? Hypo means less, calcium. That can cause severe consequences. Okay, respiratory paralysis, respiratory muscles. Calcium is very important for muscle contraction, right? So if hypocalcemia occurs, then the muscles will get very weak, and that may cause the respiratory failure. The person will not be able to breathe because of the paralysis of the respiratory muscles. Muscle will lose the tone. Now, if the concentration of calcium goes above 11, that is called hyper. Hyper means more, right? Hypercalcemia. Makes sense? That is also not good. Hypercalcemia. If calcium is high in your blood, that will cause the problems like kidney stone formation is one common thing that can occur in hypercalcemia. Okay, if the concentration of sodium is high, that is called hypernatremia. Remember, hypernatremia. Na, sodium. Okay, Na. If the concentration of sodium is less, that is called hyponatremia. Make sense? And if the body gets hypernatremia occurs, then some clinical conditions or abnormal conditions occur, including seizures. That means convulsion, okay, of the muscle. Excitability, increase excitation in the muscles. Okay, hyperreflex. Reflex can occur with very weak stimulation, okay, in the body, or even can cause coma. Okay, so you see that maintaining the concentration of electrolytes in the body is very important. Okay, now another condition related to potassium. If the concentration of potassium is more than normal, that is called again hyperkalemia. Here K, potassium. Here Na, sodium. Okay. Here Ca, calcium, and if less than normal, the concentration of potassium, that is called hypokalemia. Make sense? Potassium is very important for heart function, heart muscle contraction, and if hypokalemia occurs, the change of potassium ion occurs, then your heartbeat could be irregular. Makes sense, right? Because potassium regulates the contraction of the heart muscle. Irregular heartbeat, that is called arrhythmia. Also called I think there is an H here, arrhythmia. Okay, so those are some clinical terminology that we use to indicate the change of calcium, sodium, potassium. Okay, now acid base balance. In your body you have buffers. Buffers regulate the pH in the body. So buffers are, remember, mixtures of chemicals, not a single chemical, mixtures of chemicals, and that regulate the pH. The important buffers in your body are blood buffers. In your blood you have buffers. What are the important blood buffers? Bicarbonate, buffer, phosphate buffer, and protein buffers. Those are the blood buffers. Okay, bicarbonate buffer, phosphate buffer, protein buffer, and they regulate the pH of the blood. And all these are chemicals, right? So chemical buffer system. And when the pH changes in the body, the chemical buffers will act first. First line of defense will quickly fix the pH. Okay. Also, your respiratory centers in the brain, by changing the breathing pattern, regulates the pH. And renal, kidney, you already know kidney is or urinary system regulates the pH. If hydrogen ion concentration increases, I talked about that before, the pH will go down, right? That will cause acidosis, and your kidneys in this case will excrete excess amount of hydrogen ion by secretion. So that is how the renal mechanism works. If more hydrogen ion accumulates, kidneys will excrete excess amount of hydrogen to bring the pH back to normal. Brain system. Let me explain quickly. If carbon dioxide is produced more, accumulates, like you know are not breathing normally, the carbon dioxide is being accumulated in your body. That carbon dioxide will react with water to produce H2CO3, and it quickly breaks. We talked about this in respiratory system, hydrogen ion and bicarbonate, right, quickly. And when more carbon dioxide will be accumulated in the body, more hydrogen ion will be produced too, right? Makes sense? By this reaction. So that means increased hydrogen ion will decrease the pH, that will cause acidosis. So that will do what? This hydrogen ion directly stimulates the respiratory centers in your brain, and your brain will send signal to the lungs to increase the breathing. So more breathing will occur, right? When this pH will go down, hydrogen ion will stimulate the brain centers, respiratory centers here, to increase the rate of respiration. So more breathing will occur, more carbon dioxide will get out from the body, and no more hydrogen ion will be produced. Okay, so you see, very simple. Uh, Now, chemical buffers, bicarbonate, phosphate, proteins. Let me quickly explain how a chemical buffer works. I told you a chemical buffer is a mixture of chemicals, right? So, for example, bicarbonate buffer is a mixture of H2CO3 carbonic acid and HCO3 bicarbonate. Okay, so this is the bicarbonate buffer. Now let me tell you, if hydrogen ion concentration for any cause increases in your blood, then acidosis will occur, right? So the goal is removing that excess hydrogen ion, right? That is the goal. So in this case, what will happen, this bicarbonate, which is negatively charged, will quickly bind with this hydrogen and will produce H2CO3. So you see, this free hydrogen is quickly removed, right? And that will increase the pH, okay, and fix the problem. So quickly this free hydrogen will be converted to H2CO3 and no more hydrogen ion is there in the blood. Okay, only the excess hydrogen ion will be removed. Now let me think opposite. If hydrogen ion concentration decreases, that means alkalosis, less hydrogen ion is in the blood, less than normal, right, which is not good. So in this case, what you have to do, you don't have to remove, you have to add more hydrogen ion, right, because the amount is less. So in this case, this component or part of bicarbonate buffer will come forward, and what it will do, it will quickly split into hydrogen ion and bicarbonate. Makes sense? And this hydrogen will add in the blood. So will be added in the blood. So the hydrogen ion concentration will go up. So if hydrogen ion should be removed, your blood has more hydrogen than normal, then this one will come forward. If hydrogen ion should be added, then this one will come forward. And you see, these two together forms the bicarbonate buffer. So that's how a buffer works. Okay, here you see those three types of buffers just I mentioned. Okay, acids are the chemicals that can quickly release or donate hydrogen. More hydrogen means more acidic, less pH, you already know. Bases quickly removes, not release, quickly remove hydrogen ion. So if the hydrogen ion concentration is more, then the bases will remove it. If hydrogen ion concentration is less, then acids can release the hydrogen ion, and that I explained before. For example, the most common base is, let me just see how a base can remove the hydrogen ion. Base removes the hydrogen ion by producing bicarbonate. For example, by producing OH. For example, this is most common base in the body is sodium hydroxide. This is the most common base. So if hydrogen ion concentration increases, what will happen? This base will release OH, sodium plus OH, quickly split and release OH, and this OH then will bind with this free hydrogen to produce water, which is neutral, right? So no more free hydrogen is there. So bases quickly remove hydrogen ion by producing what? By producing OH, okay, hydroxide. And acids quickly release hydrogen. For example, HCl, I showed you before, quickly splits into these two. Okay, that will lower the pH. Now, if you have two acids, this is hydrochloric acid and this is carbonic acid, H2CO3. Both are acids because both can quickly release hydrogen. Make sense? Both can quickly release hydrogen. However, if I tell you that this HCl releases more hydrogen ion than carbonic acid, although both quickly release, but this one is faster than this one. This is stronger acid, this is weaker acid. So how much hydrogen ion is quickly released by that acid, that determines the strength of the acid. The one produces more, that is the stronger acid. The one produces less, that is the weaker acid. Okay, so I think those are the important things you need to know from the body fluid. Okay, thank you.